Welcome to the Centerville City Planning Commission meeting. Today's date is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. I am Lorraine Patterson, the Vice Chair, and I am officially opening this meeting at 7:06. So, Mountain Standard Time. So tonight we have a smaller quorum, but we do have a quorum. It consists of 4 people: Amanda Jorgensen, Sean Hoff, Gary Woodward, and myself. Chair Care, Lane Jenkins, and Tyler Moss are absent. So we will start this meeting tonight. Since Lane is gone, I will fill in and do the thought and prayer tonight. So this last week, my husband and I, along with my brother and sister-in-law, spent a week in Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia, and Virginia Capitol, and Charlottesville and Richmond, and Kitty Hawk, and it was just amazing. We learned so much about history and so much about presidents of the United States. It rocked. Just have to say, if you haven't done it, do it. It's so amazing. So we just learned so many cool things about our presidents, and in-depth history about where they lived, and we went to these locations. And one of the things that I really loved was that Virginia, so George Washington is from Virginia. So he was loved by the North and he was loved by the South. Like, nobody really hated him. They revered him. And so I was just thinking today about George Washington and the things that I learned, and what a really cool man he was, and what a great leader he was, and how honest he was, and how much integrity he has. And so I found this quote that I wanted to read from him. And I think that really applies for today because of all of the protests and all of the hate that's going on, and it's frustrating, to be on whatever party you're in. It's frustrating right now. So this was one of my favorites. This is from George Washington. Be Americans. Let there be no sectionalism, no North, no South, East, or West. You are all dependent on one another and should be one in union. In one word, be a nation. Be Americans and be true to yourselves. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Be one, be a nation. And help others, right? Have compassion. So with that, I will have a prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we gather together tonight as a planning commission. We are grateful for the opportunity to serve and come together and be like-minded and be able to help with solutions for the city and for the citizens of this city. We ask that we would be able to be clear-minded and also be able to understand the things that are before us this night. We ask thee to please watch over and continue to bless our beloved community that we really do love and care for. And we say these things, Father, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first thing on the agenda tonight are the zoning code amendments, the body art facilities, and I believe, Mr. Eggett, you're taking this one.
That's right.
Okay.
You want me to jump in then?
Yep, jump
Okay.
right in, please.
Okay, so our intent, just to give a preface on both item 1 and item 2, why we're doing it this way. We want to share our research information, Sydney and I, and the feedback and guidance and direction as far as how you want to proceed, if we want to move forward with any public hearing, noticing, that sort of thing. I know right now we're down 3 commissioners, so that may weigh into that decision, frankly, and I understand that. But even then, even if it's just informing you with the information we found through our research and what we think about that information, how it applies, we felt like that was helpful. So that's the intent. I went through and watched our last planning commission meeting where there was a lot of discussion about this item to make sure that I was able to remember what the research requests were. I didn't dig down into some of the things about, what was the term? It was electrolysis and a couple of the other body, because it felt like we started to go down that rabbit hole and then we backed out and said, well, let's not go there. So I didn't do any of that research. I kept it to the surface of what do other cities do? And are there any standards as far as conditional uses, those that do have standards, what that looks like? Because it seemed like those were the two big questions that came out of that discussion when we were talking about body art / tattoos. So if you go to, Cindy, it's the research key, that one. Click on that. This is basically a quick summation of what I found. And then obviously we can talk about each of the city's codes and look at their maps and stuff. Because I think that would be helpful for you to see how they set up their cities and where they do provide for body art tattoos. So if you look at the top, cities with ordinances for body art tattoos, I looked at 7 cities, all the South Davis area cities and all the way up to Layton, and only found 2 cities that have a code that is specific for body art and tattoos. In fact, I think, well, I'll have to look at it. I think both cities use that term, tattoo. Well, no, I take that back. Layton, I think, just has the term tattoo, and Bountiful has the term tattoo / body art. That's how they have it set up in their codes, and we can look at that on their definitions. But interestingly enough, Farmington, Kaysville, North Salt Lake, West Bountiful, and Woods Cross, none of them have any reference whatsoever to the term tattoo in their code. 0. So I kind of said on the phone when I briefly talked to Lorraine about it, I feel almost like their heads are in the sand on it, like they just don't want to talk about it, and whether it's permitted or conditional or not permitted, they just don't talk about it. So at least our code right now, we reference it even though we say not permitted in any zone. So I thought that was an interesting finding. Then as you look at Bountiful City, you look at the definitions, if you'll go to the chapter 3 on the left there, Sydney, and we'll come back to the maps in a minute, but on the, yeah. It's down at the very bottom. And what I wanted to do is show you how the definitions are set up, because there's I can't remember if it's Layton or Bountiful, but it's interesting in light of what we've recently reviewed relative to the county's definition. So I know it's ways down. Sorry, I just added their code. Go up.
Is it tattoo?
Right there. Yep, 304. Theirs is really basic, but you can see they do call it out as body art establishment. Facility offering services such as tattooing, body piercing, or other body modification procedures in a sterile environment. That's their simple definition. So we won't need to pull up Chapter 6. You're welcome to look at it if you want, but Chapter 6 commercial tattooing on their matrix is conditional. It's a conditional use in both the commercial high and the commercial medium. So just think about that right now, because we're going to go look at the zoning map in a minute, but it is a conditional use. It's not permitted in those zones, or conditional general, that's what they call it. Conditional, so it's heavy commercial, sorry, not conditional, heavy commercial, general commercial, they're 2 zones, but it's conditional in both of those zones in their city. So that's a key point. Then I added downtown. It is not permitted in downtown zone, and it is not permitted in mixed use zone. So what I did was I was trying to do a comprehensive research study of all the zones, all their land use codes, and see where it references tattoo or body art, that term. And these are all the areas that had it in their code. Okay. We'll go over to the conditional uses in a minute, but yeah, go back to that key, one more down, and click on the map now. Because I think this will be helpful. Now, this was surprising to me, because I know we've heard a lot about, Bountiful Hound stuff, but if you look at their it's kind of hard to see, but yeah, right there, red is commercial heavy, and pink, that salmon, dark salmon, is commercial
Thank you.
general. So all those areas that are pink have conditional use permit opportunities for tattoo in Bountiful, interestingly enough, which really surprised me.
And remind me how conditional use works.
So we'll cover that in a second with at least Bountiful, but generally speaking, you have to look at any reasonable impacts health, safety, welfare impacts to neighboring businesses, the public at large, conflicts with transportation general plan, those sorts of things, impacts that need to be mitigated. If they can be reasonably mitigated by the applicant, then it gives the planning commission opportunity to grant the conditional use permit. If some kind of noted impact cannot be reasonably be mitigated or resolved, then that is grounds for a denial of that use.
Okay.
That's kind of, it's very simplistic. It's much more legalese written than that, but that's the general concept.
Whereas other things don't have to jump through those hoops.
Correct.
They just kind of have a slam dunk.
Yeah, they're just permitted because, or they're not permitted
Or,
otherwise.
yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So yeah, you can see it was surprising to see that's the case. Now, you know, it is hard for me to tell dark salmon versus light salmon, but I appreciate you doing that because I was actually just gonna say that.
Oh, there is some that's available, like right here, right on like the Centerville.
Yeah, right on Main Street, in fact, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just that's just outside of our boundary, which is kind
Oh,
of
okay, I know
interesting.
exactly where that's at.
And right there too.
Yep, the heavy commercial.
Yeah.
They could do any of that.
And what they would do, and we'll talk about conditional use a little bit more, but basically they would do a reasonable evaluation to make sure if somebody came in with a permit in any of those locations and evaluate, okay, are there gonna be impacts to traffic, are there gonna be impacts to businesses, the neighborhood at large? And if there are, what are those impacts, number one? And number two, how is the applicant gonna mitigate or resolve those concerns so that it's not impacting the residents? Like oftentimes, a good, for example, would be, let's say you had a conditional use permit for a business that's really noisy. They have some kind of manufacturing process that they do in the back and they sell out the front, right? We might have a conditional use permit that says, yes, this is allowed to be conditional use in these zones, but what we're gonna check, obviously, is what are they gonna do to mitigate that noise so it doesn't escape out of the building and impact neighboring property owners or individuals, right? So we would ask them to show us a plan of their mitigation standards, and then you as a planning commission would evaluate the evidence they brought forward to see if they'd be able to be granted that conditional use permit to operate, because they've done what they need to dampen the sound impact.
A couple planning commissions ago, when Sal Moto, that motorcycle, that they wanted to sell the motorcycles and they wanted to do the outdoor demonstrations, that was a conditional use permit,
Yeah.
Yep.
so.
Okay, perfect. So let's go back to then the main body of the documentation. Thanks for doing that for me. Let's talk about Layton's code a little bit now.
Let's see if.
I had to do that earlier. I think I had to hold it and then pick the one I wanted, 'cause
Well, gee, thanks for telling me, Mike.
there it is. So yeah, now go to Bountiful's conditional use. Let's talk about that for a minute, actually. And I'm not really excited about their conditional use permit. I think ours is better than theirs, just a heads up for it, but I do find it interesting that they have that much pink with conditional use and their conditional use ordinance is the simplistic. That's the point I wanna make. So if you look, their standards for determination, it's A and B. Again, that's some of that legalese I was talking about, and I say legalese just because I really simplified it, but that's what the standard is. The A is the standard to approve, B is the standard to deny. But then if you look at C, these are what Bountiful has declared specifically as conditions, or I guess, directives of what impacts they're trying to mitigate, would be the best way to explain it, specifically, right? And so, A and B would be a test of things that are tied to C.
Right.
Would be the best way to look at that. And then you can see in D, if the city feels like, oh, that kind of business is gonna do all these impacts, then the city, Bountiful could request any of those items to better understand what impacts, if any, need to be mitigated and how the applicant then will bring that forward and mitigate whatever findings came out of that study. To give the planning commission the information they want. So that's as basic as theirs is. And I did include ours, but I don't want to go to ours yet. I want you to see Bountiful and Layton's, and then we'll come back and look at ours after that. And then you can see there's terms about how it applies, and they allow for a temporary conditional use permit up to 6 months, and then you can get an extension of it for certain types of uses and those sorts of things.
I did like that they have a time limit on that.
And those are only on the temporaries though.
Oh,
So a conditional use permit in most cases runs with the land and is transferable.
Oh, it is.
Usually transferable, unless something very specifically is stated with the approval of the conditional use permit, that it expires with the applicant.
didn't we do that?
Yeah, we
the
did that with
bike
one of
place?
ours, yeah.
Yeah, so that ends when they end.
Yep, yep.
but
So
some.
unless it's
some carry
declared,
on.
but if it's not declared or spelled out, it runs with the land
But we,
Okay.
by default.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Until it got rezoned.
Yeah, so, okay, so let's go to Layton. This is the one again, it is, you're in the right spot.
Yeah, you were back there.
Go back to the
you
left.
don't want me to do that one?
Well, that is, but yeah,
Right
there
there,
it is.
Layton.
Yep, go up, right there. Yep, that's it. And then scroll all the way down to, again, tattoo, sorry, I know. It's, yeah, do
It's
that.
alphabetical order.
That's way better.
Or you could do the control F buttons.
Oh, and then do the T.
They're magical.
Yeah, that's.
In this, though, it will refer to the key. I made that mistake earlier. Okay, there you go. Tattooing by Layton. See, now this one matches really closely to the state and a little bit to the well, not a little bit, quite a bit to the county as well. Which I think it's interesting that some of these terms are defined as tattooing because they're different than tattooing, but that's fine. That's Layton's code, whatever. Means the application of permanently depositing pigments not required for medical purposes into the human skin by the use of a needle or other implement for the purposes of creating a mark, design, word, branding, scarification, and/or body art placed on the skin. The implantation technique deposits color pigmentation below the epidermis into the dermis. The two areas that I don't think are really tattooing are branding and scarification. I think
Right.
those are different techniques altogether.
Yes.
But it's interesting that Layton just says they're all
It's,
tattooing. We don't want to mess with it, it's all tattooing.
Well, and I think they have 3 different parlors in Layton, correct?
They, or more, I know of one at least, I know of
Okay.
one that's right on the main street.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And it looks pretty nice from the road, I mean, it's obvious it's a tattoo
They do piercing and tattoos.
shop, but it doesn't look bad, it doesn't, like the signage and the aesthetic of it's in a nice shopping center, so it
Well,
doesn't.
maybe I'm
stand
thinking of a
out.
different one. The one I'm thinking of is tucked back in, okay.
Yeah, this one, you can see it off of Main Street, it's kind of down by like where Hobby Lobby and the bowling lanes are and stuff. And by Kohl's, it's kind of in that stretch right there in one of those newer buildings. But, yeah, interesting that they do that, and that does line up with again, findings from Lisa and myself relative to other definitions we found from the state and the county. Yeah, go ahead, go there.
You mean it aligns with it minus those 2 words?
Well, it lines up, but they've included it into tattooing, whereas the state and the county have explicitly A, B, C, D, E as body art. See, that's what's happened. I think Layton would be better off changing their definition to say body art, and then that definition works right. And maybe better clarifying branding and scarification is elements, but they've just rolled them into tattoos and confused it.
Yeah.
Rather than follow what the state and the county have and calling it body art and making it a little more clearly spelled out that there are different characteristics of body art. Yeah. So interesting. Okay, go ahead and go, yeah, the land uses, thank you. So, just note, hey,
Oh, sorry.
you're fine. At the top, just, the ones that we're gonna worry about are, CH. So that is commercial high. It's on the very end, you'll see CP1, CP2, right there, yep.
Oh, see.
That's where the tattoo is gonna fall. So now roll down.
Go to page 11.
Yeah, it's way down there.
4, 5, 6, 7.
It's way down because it's in another there it is, go up
Whoops,
a
go
little
up.
bit. Right there. So it's conditional, again, in that case.
And it's only in like
Only in-
commercial high.
Yeah, and you'd think okay, that means it's very limited, but wait till we see zoning map. Now go to the zoning map.
My goodness.
Go down to the key, one more. Yep, and then click on that. Now this is a little tricky because the key is hard to find. It took me a minute to find it, but I did find it. So you have to click the little, yep, exactly, and then scroll down just a little. Okay, scroll back up. CH is the grid that's up and down, the pink and white, okay? Now look on their zoning map.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
All there.
the whole entirety of Main Street, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much.
Commercial high. Which surprises me that the mall is not considered commercial high.
Yeah, yeah.
And they even have little patches along Hillfield Road too. Do you see that?
Oh, yeah.
They've got little enclaves of it. So interestingly enough, they're open to it in a certain area that's pretty, and even,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
on
down
that
there
side
at
down
the
there.
bottom.
So to be honest, now that I'm thinking back on when we were wanting to not do it on Main Street, and it seems so weird, like, why don't you just do the whole city? And yet, the cities here in Davis County are doing exactly what we,
Again, the bigger ones,
The
right?
bigger ones,
Yeah,
right,
the other,
right.
other 5 are not
Doing
talking
anything.
about
Not
it.
doing it, yeah.
We don't want to talk about it, right? But yeah, the two that are bigger, that's how they're
That
representing
is
it.
so interesting.
Yeah, yeah, so that's what the finding has yielded. Okay, so I'll go back, now, yeah, let's look at Layton City's conditional use permit.
Nice research.
Yeah,
This took a minute.
Yes, you've done a lot,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, that's really
Thank
helpful.
you.
okay, go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Let's see, where is it? Keep going down. Keep going on. Yeah, they do this a little backwards. There's the temporary, keep going down, keep going. There it is, determination considerations. So, again, up at the very beginning, they use the same terminology that you see, and you can see it continued here in this first paragraph. Conditions to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use, et cetera, right? Necessary for protection of adjacent properties and public welfare. And then they have these 4 broken out areas that are their screens, if you will, that the land use authority, I don't know if it's the city council or staff or the planning commission, but whatever their land use authority has to look at these 4 things to determine, more broadly speaking, if they would grant that conditional use permit or not. So they look at the location, does it match the intent of the general plan and applicable zoning district regulations around it, right? That area. Does it provide a service or facility that will contribute to the general well-being of the community and the neighborhood? Now, that one's a little, that one I'm not real excited about.
Speculative
It
on
is,
that.
yeah, that's very subjective, so that one's maybe not the best.
Subjective is the better word, yep. Yep.
It takes away objectivity, but that's fine. You know, that's what they want to do. It's just I wouldn't really hang my hat too hard on that one. Under the circumstances, particular case, be detrimental to health, safety, or general welfare. See, that's the strongest. That's one of the stronger ones right there. Rezoning or working, and then conditions imposed by land use authority shall be based upon options described in the chapter or any special condition requirements. So now, 4 is kind of a kicker to what's below it, so scroll down. Okay, now they go and they get real surgical. So they take their statements, and then they added all these subconditions that give whoever the land use authority is, ideas of what kind of discretionary terms or things they're looking for to justify their conditional use evaluation. In other words, to justify the approval, what kind of things would need to be mitigated based on, number 1, if you're worried about the zoning district and how it applies to the plan. A through I is ideas to consider and look at, right? So that's what they've gone and done, and then they do the same thing for conditions relating to safety for persons and property, if you'll scroll down a little, A through G. And then 3, conditions relating to health and sanitation, A through C, and then conditions relating to environmental concerns, A through D. So they're trying to give guidance. The thing is interesting, when you think about, I was thinking about this, okay, which of these, all of these standards, these 20 or 25 standards, apply to a tattoo? I can't see 4, A through D applying.
Yeah, vegetation, no.
I can't see really 3, A through C, as far as because they're representing it more from a utilities perspective.
Right.
Do you see that?
Water and sewer, yeah.
Yep. And so maybe a little bit of 2, A through G, just a little bit, but again, not very much, because a lot of that, again, is more citing. So the only one that seems to even kind of work is 1, A through I. But even there, which was what Mason's point was, is which of these then are relative conditions to justify a conditional use permit?
Right.
And so that's kind of interesting and tricky as I look. I think there's a few there that might work. I think if your general plan has some very clear guidance on what it expects in certain areas, maybe, because the general plan is trying to tell you where it feels comfortable for what kind of uses.
Okay.
So if a general plan says, you know, this area of the city is meant to be, I don't know, I don't even know how to do it without it being subjective in my statement. An area that encourages growth and commerce for all to enjoy. It's meant to be a commercial district, a place for people to gather, et cetera, et cetera. That may not be an area for a tattoo to be what the city wants
Right.
per the general plan in that
Right.
area, right?
Right.
But if it's an area that says, an area with diverse business options and mixed uses and to provide for multiple forms of commerce, it probably fits that kind of an area if that's how you're calling it out in your general plan. So,
Yeah.
so that's kind of an interesting one to look at and think about. Anyway, I'm not even sure Layton's is spot on in justifying their conditional use permitting for it, but as I tried to go through the process myself were I in that position in tattooing, I think that that's how it would look at that. Now, let's go to our conditional use code, up at the top. Right, where is it? Two more down, right there, yep. So, let's go past the application, keep going down. All right, here's, again, see, we have in number 2, very similar language. And then they have to provide evidence. If you see there's therefore, or here's our 4 standards, which are similar. Use will not be detrimental to health, safety, or general welfare. Proposed use of particular location is necessary or desirable to provide a service facility which will contribute. There's that, see that one that I'm not real excited about. Proposed use will comply with regulations and conditions specified in this title, and proposed use will comply with applicable provisions of the general plan. So it looks similar to what we've seen. And then you can see your standard would be, you can ask for additional information on 4 to reasonably need to determine whether requirements of the subsection can be met. So yeah, let's look at now 5. So these are our factors. These are our guiding tools that give you multiple forms of screens as you look at an application. So what I would like you to do, and I don't necessarily think you have to do this all right now, you can even, as you're thinking about this broader topic, look at A through J and see if it were to be a conditional use, would it fall in line with A through J? Would it be applicable? And I think that was what our Chair Care's test was in our last meeting. If A through J don't really apply, and we picked an area, let's say we did do it in the industrial very high or industrial high, for instance, right? Because that's kind of what the recommendation from staff had been or has been and is in your packet reflecting that, and in limitation in the PDO over there. If we did conditional, are there qualifying features of A through J that would require us to screen it as a conditional use permit in those areas? If not, then should it be permitted? And I think that just for the sake of his discussion, even though he's not here, I'm channeling Mason a little bit, but I believe that's what he's trying to get at with what he said at our last meeting. Now, I'm not saying, Mike Eggett, that I feel persuaded. Maybe it does qualify for conditional use permit. But again, if it doesn't meet Articles A through J, then why are we designated as a conditional use permit if we're not going to use that screen and those factors to do so?
And I
even-
think it has the likelihood of being for other reasons, discriminatory reasons. That would be my concern with making it a conditional use permit.
Right, and that's why
Wait,
exactly.
can you tell me more about
Yeah,
what
go
you
ahead,
just
please.
So
said?
rather than saying, oh, we think it's going to be, well, let's see. Yeah, it's not suitable for this property, like generally the conditional use permit applications and factors should be objective, this land isn't big enough, or, it's going to be too noisy,
Okay.
those sorts of things, the negative impact, but most of it's going to be people wondering about the clientele.
Right.
That's the whole concern on Main Street, is what kind of people is it going to bring? That was the public comment, and as the city trying to make that decision, I think it would create, some potential for legal pitfalls in making that determination.
Yeah, and actually, I was gonna go to that. I think there's a bigger issue here too for discussion about maybe tweaking our conditional use permit code.
Oh, yeah, we've been
I was
saying
actually
that
gonna go
forever.
there.
It doesn't even, the case law has gone far beyond this to say, look, and even the statutes say it has to be more objective, but, so yeah, that's been on our list for a while.
Is that even a discussion for us? Because we don't change policy.
No,
No, it's just on staff's list.
yeah, I'm just saying
I
it's
see.
something to be cautious with, which is where I was coming and talking about. Let's be
Okay.
cautious even as you evaluate it. I think it's safer, even though these are guides, I think you have to have multiple of them to then have solutions for multiple of them together, rather like than Lisa saying if it's just, I don't think this is suitable for this area of the city.
Yeah, it's not-
Well, you better have A, B, C, F, G, and
Well, you can only deny a
Factors.
conditional use permit if you have established negative impacts,
Right.
number one, which this does, you have to find the negative impact. If there's negative impacts, second, you have to prove that they cannot be mitigated.
Right.
And this implies that you can just say it because you don't like it, which is
Yeah.
not the case law at this time.
Yeah.
which is where I was going. If you go back up to the original 3 or 4 standards, that's the better screen right there, I guess is
And
where
my-
I'm ending up.
Proposal is to just put it in zones where, you know, there's similar uses, it's not near residential, you're not going to have to, you know, mitigate any negative impacts because it's in these more commercial.
The appropriate zone, right?
yeah,
The fitting
appropriate
zones.
zoning, and so
Yeah.
then, and that was the idea in drafting the ordinance, which was, yeah, we're putting it over in with other heavier uses.
So I have a point of clarification. So, and maybe I misunderstood what you just said about conditional use permit. Like if somebody asks, Sydney comes and she asks for a conditional use permit, and obviously we can't say, we just don't like it, we don't want it. But did I misunderstand you when you said if they ask and they meet the qualifications, we have to grant it?
Well, if they ask, and we cannot show any detrimental impacts.
Adverse, yeah.
Then we
impact.
have to allow it.
And we have to allow it.
But if there's negative impacts, then we still can't deny it if we can mitigate those negative impacts with conditions.
Which comes back to if they show evidence, right? Again, if they can explain how they can mitigate, let's say.
Like, so we did this with,
Yeah.
like, the Walmart, I think it was a conditional use for a planned center, and people were very concerned about the noise that these semis were going to bring. And so, we actually had different testimony on, you know, how big the trucks were, how noisy they are, and evidently with the refrigerated ones, they do leave them on all the time. And so that was a negative impact, is the noise, because it is near residential, but then the mitigation was to bring in smaller trucks, cap the size of the trucks, and, you know, have more bays. You can also do some screening, and then we also capped the decibels.
Yeah, even time of delivery can.
Yeah, and time of delivery. So
Yeah.
those are all very objective analysis, and then establishing the negative impact, but then we mitigated it all. So, yeah, they still get the conditional use permit.
Yeah.
So I guess to ask, that is interesting, but I'm glad. I mean, that's a lot
The
of,
size of their walls and all of the shrubbery around there.
Well, some of that was, I mean, they did, as a planned center, they had to, yeah, provide screening.
Enhancement, but yeah, I mean,
Because
they
it-
do.
But I'm just saying as an
dual
example, you
purpose,
could
yeah.
say yes, if the data showed that, you know, a wall was sufficient.
okay, so then, and maybe I'm just not understanding something. I guess this question's probably for Lisa, but maybe for anybody. So if it's a for-profit business that comes into the city, that wants to come into the city zoning, right, determines whether that business should be allowed or not, or whether they want it here or not, right?
It's
Is that
determined in a
right?
certain zone, so let's say that like a for-profit business comes in and says, I wanna put a restaurant in this residential area. I would say, actually, no, you cannot do that, because based on our table of standards, it's not permitted and it's not conditionally permitted. So, no, you cannot put it there. You can put it in a commercial medium or a commercial high, but you can't put it in a commercial very high or an industrial spot, because it's not a conditional use or a permitted use. So, I or Mike would get the business application, and it wouldn't be a land use, it would be a business permit, and they would say, I want to put that here, and I would look at my table of use and I would say, yes or no. If it's conditional, that's when I say you have to apply for a conditional use permit. And then they come in and that's when they present to everybody. And based on what our conditional use code says, I write a staff report saying, okay, they do not impact, it's not detrimental to health, safety, and general welfare. I contact the police chief, the fire station, the building inspector, and then any other departments that I think, okay, this could have a big impact for. That's why with the last one that came in, I contacted the police chief, because I was like, well, that's gonna be really noisy. How are we gonna, how do you handle that? And so that's when we tied it in, and basically it would be impactful if they did it at a different time, but because they could mitigate it by doing it in between those times, then we had to give it to them.
But a lot of uses are permitted,
Right, and if it's permitted.
most. Like it's just, you figure out the zone you can do when you come in, so.
And it's actually, I can pull it up on our screen. So this is our table of use. And you'll see that we have it divided by agriculture, by residential use, and then our really long one, oh, and civil, and then this is our commercial use. So at the top, this is agriculture, Rs are residential, PFs are public facilities, commercials are Cs, and then industrials are Is. So if we go down to, Rs would be, we go to personal care services, we, you,
Tattoo establishments or rovents.
Okay. It is
nose, nose,
not
nose,
permitted
nose.
anywhere, is what
No.
it shows right now.
So is that the one of the two things or one of the couple things that we don't allow? Yeah, I mean, we don't allow cash to check or check to cash or whatever that is, and something else.
It's hard to mention every use,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
No,
There's,
right, but can't
hundreds
the,
of things.
what I'm asking is though, and I don't want to get into all the tiny
Yeah, we're a
details of
little
what
off
can,
topic, but-
what can and can't happen, but doesn't the city have final say? Like, I want to bring in a slaughterhouse, right, for horses, which I'd never do because I love them, used to have them, right? But I wanted to do that, I want that business here.
yeah, some
Can't you
uses
just
we
say-
can define and
No.
say this, yeah, doesn't, but, yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the conditional use, like, if they can mitigate everything, then you have to allow them to be here?
Yeah, that's probably the best way to look at it for terms of today's discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they
Okay.
mitigate them, it's based on who, like, the planning commission and the city council's feelings, and it's subjective still, right?
So the planning commission would be the land use authority. It should be, to answer your question, yes, you're the decision maker, but you should do it based on objective standards and evidence.
Right,
If you deny a conditional use permit on subjective items, it's,
Right, and
unlawful.
you shouldn't, but I'm
that's why
wondering-
I'm concerned about making it a conditional use, but, because I think in these sorts of controversial items, that will be the consideration.
Yeah.
Even though
Anyway.
that's the case.
But I don't know if we want to talk about the actual language that's proposed, or if you wanted to just go general.
My plan was just to provide the research and then see how the planning commission wanted to discuss it and then see if we wanted to set it for a public hearing or we wanted to wait
And
till.
maybe we can just show them what
Sure.
zones
Yeah,
we're
Lisa,
proposing.
if you wanna
I don't
talk
know if
about-
it's,
We did the last, we
No,
could do
please
the
do,
review.
show us.
Yeah.
We did
yeah,
it
we don't
months
need to
ago.
look at the language, because we can,
Right.
I guess as staff saying,
But
we'll
it's-
talk about
it's-
the language later, but really it's just
That's what I was
proposed for all zones,
Go,
or some zones on the west side, nothing
Right.
east
go
of
to
I-50.
1236-040, go to that one, that shows it. See, it's our table.
Yeah,
So
right.
it would be allowed in,
And I put question mark by conditional because I didn't know, but it could be permitted in all
Yeah.
those.
Commercial village.
So
I
see,
prefer permitted, and you're only looking at high, industrial very high,
and then
and
CVHPD.
CVH in, so if you look at our zoning map,
Oh, y'all needed to tell me I needed to pull this stuff up beforehand.
well, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that was ours, oh. And that's fine, if we didn't want to get into but just showing, it's easy enough to say that we're just talking in the industrial zones on the west side, and then the
Right.
two PDOs would allow it in the Legacy Crossing project. We have a couple pads that are left in that, and then the other one is the Legacy
Trails.
Legacy Trail Apartments. Okay, yeah, focus in.
I need to see where
Right,
that
yeah,
is.
just those,
Right here.
so there's
correct?
two pads, yeah, in the Legacy Trail, and then also in this, and then the rest and some of those. So what I'm saying is why we don't necessarily need a conditional is, well, maybe for those PDOs, you could have that, so that's,
I think something
But
wrong
yeah.
with the GIS module, Cindy, I don't think it's you.
Okay,
so I,
thanks.
yeah, I think we can have that discussion later, but, from my perspective, I think we need to allow them somewhere, but it doesn't have to be on Main Street.
Right.
Yeah, at this point,
Completely
basically,
agree with that,
e-
yeah.
everything west of I-15 that you see is IVH, IH, or that PD area. So what's proposed right now is looking at all those areas, but there is no IH or IVH east of I-15.
Right.
I don't know if he's messing with it,
I
but
think he
those
is.
overlaid, that's not,
Yeah.
Normally, there's an
I
overlay.
actually don't want the overlay to be a color, it should just be hashed,
Yeah,
so you can still tell the zoning.
I
normally,
agree.
there's an overlay, but I think something's wrong with the GIS, honestly. I think it's not drawing it correctly. So,
Okay, so bottom line on that is nothing east of Main Street. It would only be in
Nothing east of
industrial.
I-15.
I'm sorry, of I-15.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I-15.
That-
I was
that's-
seeing it, saying it wrong.
That's what the proposal or the discussion has been, and that's what the guidance is from our city attorney and city staff at current time.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I guess the question is, are you ready to bring this forward with a proposed ordinance and a public hearing?
Yeah, that's the next question.
So are you saying that you're done? Are you wanting us to talk about it?
I think I'm good with what I presented. That's all those are all my research findings per the direction of the planning commission.
You want us to discuss?
So yes, I guess I am kicking it back to the planning commission for some direction, like Lisa's asking. Are we at a point we're ready to schedule a public hearing and take it to the next planning commission meeting for public hearing? Do you want more time, I don't know, for discussion with other planning commissioners, or how do you want to proceed?
All right, so for the commission, do you have anything that you want to ask them more than we already have? We sort of went out of order, but I feel like we're missing three key people,
Right.
and I want their opinions. I value their opinions.
Okay.
And their thoughts, and I think it's bigger than us. For me, I don't know about you guys, but I'd be much more comfortable discussing, again, I mean, you don't want to beat a dead horse, and we've been given a lot of information. They've missed out on a lot of information. And I do not feel it's ready for public comment.
Well, and maybe I
at all.
could,
Or public, yeah.
maybe with your direction, Vice Chair, I could send them an email just saying, it'd be really advantageous for you to go back and listen to the YouTube
Yeah.
recording of this meeting. So
Absolutely.
you're brought up to speed for
Yeah.
our next meeting discussion.
I mean, when I miss them, I watch it.
Yeah.
It's available for us.
So I think that is
That'd be great.
really good information. I think that they should do that, but I don't feel that it's ready.
Right.
There's too many holes.
No, I'm just saying
In
in
it?
anticipation of a future discussion.
Right.
So you're more all on the same
Yes.
page as we schedule how
I
we
agree
want to move
with that.
forward at that point. Yeah.
And I feel bad if you took long nights trying to prepare for this meeting and then we tabled it, so to speak, to another meeting. You're like, I worked so hard over
It's
the
okay.
last 3 weeks.
I aim to serve, however you want to do it. I'm comfortable.
Oh, be careful.
I
Careful what you say.
think we want to get this right.
Yeah.
Agree.
And I feel like with our city attorney, Lisa is very, 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 very experienced and knowledgeable. And I think if she's saying there's a significant legal liability here, for me personally, as staff in my role, that resounds with me. That's something we should take seriously. So,
And like time is of the essence, essentially?
No, I think under our code, once we notice it, we can argue that we have a pending ordinance, and so if someone comes in for an application now, we don't have to just deny it. We say, hey, we're thinking about it, we're trying to find a place for you,
Yeah,
that kind of
right.
thing. But while other cities may not address these or have them, it doesn't mean that it's legal. It just means that someone hasn't come
Brought
and
it
put one
forward.
there, or asked for one, or challenged it, and, at this point, we don't have a challenge, but I think we need to fill this gap in our code now that there's interest and, but,
And do
but,
we-
so I don't think it, if you want to table it, I'm fine with that too, at this point, but.
Are we, I know you're talking about whether it's a conditional use or whether it's a permitted use. Are we gonna weigh in on that, or is that something that
I think you can weigh in when we bring you the ordinance, so we can have a better staff presentation on these are the zones, and then you can see, do we need it to be conditional?
Yeah.
Because maybe in those PDOs, there is some residential, and so we're gonna preserve that right. But yes, I think we can have that discussion but it was helpful to have this sort of.
right,
little
sure.
More offline training discussion.
yeah, and I think the point was to again, per the direction, to see what other cities do.
Yeah.
I think that's very
Yeah.
interesting,
That's
right?
really helpful.
And their zoning map was really interesting when you see what they allow, what they
Yeah.
conditionally allow,
Yeah,
Over the
where they
place.
conditionally allow
Right.
it. I thought that was really interesting.
and those were all conditional, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have any permitted
No,
use
no.
for them, yeah.
So that's it. And you don't really even have to table, it. There's no action required. Basically, what I'm
We'll just
hearing
continue to discuss.
is bring back a similar discussion, have everything pretty much the way it is, bring it back for further discussion. At that next meeting, we'll see what the direction is as far as setting a public hearing. That's what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
When we have more members.
So are you telling me that that's not anything that we need to vote on, or do we need to vote on
No
a table?
action.
There's no
I don't-
action required,
I don't think
perfect.
no action, right? Do do you think there's action necessary, Lisa?
Well, as long as there's the
Do you want a
direction to
consensus?
staff so that we are bringing, I want to maintain the pending ordinance, meaning,
Working
yes, just bring this back probably at your next meeting.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's good.
So maybe you need to say that on the record.
Okay, so for the record, we would like staff to continue with this discussion and bring it back at the next meeting, with
To the next available
the
meeting.
next available meeting with further information, particularly the PDOs, and, correct?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so no voting necessary. Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 2, which is zoning code amendments, plan unit development overlay zone by Sydney. So we'll turn the time over to you.
So I have a question for you guys. So this is going to be similar to the discussion with Mike, and I will not get offended by any means if you would like me to table this discussion until there are more planning
I think we
commissioners.
should.
I am A-okay with that because this is a dense discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll just be
Yeah.
doing it over.
Exactly.
It is
So-
a dense discussion.
So I will not get offended, and it'll give staff also more time. We had a really good discussion at a DRC meeting, this Monday about kind of all three of us getting on a really good page. So I think that by the next available meeting, it'll be a lot more teased out, and, then I'll just still present all of this information.
This gives you plenty of time to read 293 pages.
293.
We would love to do
I have
that.
had problems.
We would love to.
I know.
Oh, man, you have no idea.
When we are elected and paid, we would love to do that.
Exactly. When it is our job, we will do so.
Yes, we will do so. Okay.
It's our privilege to do it is what we.
It is our privilege, actually. We love serving in this role. We really, really do. Okay, so we will essentially kind of table that. We'll move that to the next available meeting so that we can hopefully have everybody here to hear about the planned unit development overlay zone. So then the next thing that we have on the agenda is the Community Development Director's Report, and this is gonna go back to you, Mike, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so there's just two things I think I want to talk about. They're both, I guess, very timely. The first one is it's budget week this week with city council, so be aware of that. I believe all those are being recorded, right? Yeah, so we had a pretty good one last night from about 5:30 till 10. So you could even kind of fast forward and hone in or look at the agenda and kind of see. I will note that there was a little changeover from the agenda that was originally established just because Public Works had kind of a more of an emergency situation and they had to get out. So the order of it changed a little bit. So the police department didn't get a talk last night and the Parks and Rec didn't fully get a talk. So they'll start tomorrow at the beginning of our agenda. So that tomorrow starts again at 5:30 and we'll go, I guess, until we've reviewed everything. So be aware of that.
And that's a Zoom link. It is not on YouTube. It's via Zoom.
I can budget my time out. As I have kids, they just like come to my mind.
Budget my time, nice. I like that. And then how do we get that link?
I think it is on the city website. Interville website. I could double check and make sure.
But yeah,
Meetings
I'd
and
see that, yeah.
agendas.
Yeah.
And then we go to city council budget retreat, April 8th. That was last
Yeah.
night.
And
Oh,
then-
so right there.
Boom.
Okay.
So that was a good discussion. I think that, and we do have, on the record, it was said by the finance director and the city manager, we have a balanced budget, so.
Awesome. Well done, Centerville.
No, we don't have to do any tariffs or anything.
We're not going to put anything on the record right now.
Not yet, Sean, but we may table that. We may come back to
Those are
that.
jokesters tonight.
Feeling it.
Oh, man. So, yeah, so hopefully, things turn out well. I will present to the city council tomorrow for a community development, budget and planning commission. Planning commission, there's really no change from your budget last year. You have training money in there and obviously your stipend, so you'll be covered.
And we've got the candy fund over
Yeah,
there.
and your candy fund
Yep.
over there.
All right.
To subsidize, because
We got
your pay
bumped.
may not be equitable, so that's how we make it more equitable. Perfect.
Looks like I'll grab it.
Just Just take it, I'll just take the whole bag of Swedish fish and just run.
293 pages, yeah. I need the whole bag.
So that's good, yeah, so everything, I hopefully will go well. I think yesterday went, I would say pretty well. I don't think that the council was asking too hard of questions, and they were appropriate questions given what was being presented, so it feels like it's going well. One other thing I'll note, this came up today, and this was driven by a land use training provided by Utah League of Cities and Towns. I've alerted Sydney, and I copied Lisa on email. Actually, Lisa was aware of it, because I think you went to an attorney review, but it's House Bill 368. It's huge. It's, I think they said today, I think he said 7,000
7,000 lines.
lines. Yeah, so again, not light
7,000 lines
reading.
of land use
But,
code.
but if you know what you're looking for, just, you can look at the red stuff. That's where it matters. But we can also, maybe as we get a better grasp on it and realize what needs to be amended in the code, bring it to you in packet so it's not overwhelming. But if you want to be, how would I say this, the forward-thinking planning commissioner, you're welcome to look at it. It is interesting, and there are some things in there that are, how do I say this, more cumbersome for staff, but it's what we're required to do now.
So the House Bill 368 are all of the new changes?
Yeah, it's a very comprehensive land use bill, and it affects a lot of things.
Mandatory changes?
Uh-huh. And unfortunately, you know what that means? That means code amendments.
Uh-huh.
So we'll be working very closely with Lisa to figure out what we need to bring forward, if anything.
Okay.
It may or may not go to you, it may just go to the council, depending on where it sits and what it is, but it's pretty impactful.
Okay.
So just pay attention to it, and unfortunately, I'm gonna be lightly editorial with this comment, but I don't mean to be. Representative Stephen White, this has been his pitch year after year, he keeps doing this. And every year he seems, when I say every year, it's probably, I've seen it during my working probably over the last 3 to 5 years. He comes in and does this kind of stuff, and it's kind of become his banner to amend land use codes. So this continues to be an extension of previous years and years and years of behavior by this representative. So I guess what you're hearing me say is even though he's done this year, I anticipate more of this next year as well, because he continues to refine things he's already done. Is the best way to say it.
So that he looks busy?
Yeah, something like that. So, we'll try to update you. We're starting to get a lot of legislative update and information to understand what we need to distill and do as staff to protect the city. Obviously, it's state code. Lisa recently made a really good comment. If it's state code, we're already required to do it, but it's better to get it in code to link up to it. So, just be aware of that. And, we are doing the best we can with the staff we have to adjust to it, but yeah, 7,000 lines. Yeah, and the final thing, I'm gonna steal a little bit of Sydney's thunder, but maybe she doesn't care. Speaking of conditional use permits, you will have a conditional use permit request at the next planning commission meeting.
Okay.
So just be ready for that discussion as well.
That's all we get?
Yeah, that's all you get.
Just that?
It's a straightforward one. It's pretty, yes. You guys will enjoy the discussion.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
And then obviously we'll bring back both of these discussion items as well following that conditional use permit, so. But now that you've been brought up to speed with conditional use permit, you'll be ready to go for it. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
We will.
Just don't let that 2 weeks in between, let it float away. Yeah.
Just stay right here.
And I think that's it, unless either one of you feel like there's something I'm missing that you want to share. Okay? That's all I
Okay.
have.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to item number 4 on the agenda, minutes review and approval consideration from our previous meeting, which was March 12th, 2025. Did anybody have any changes or corrections on it?
Nope.
No.
I make a motion to approve the minutes?
Awesome. Anyone second?
I second the motion.
Okay, so Amanda approved it and Sean seconded it. Okay, we'll vote. Amanda?
Aye.
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 Okay, voting to accept. And I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that motion?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
What'd I say? What'd I say?
You said you'll take a
You said
motion.
you
I will
take
take
a
a
Oh,
motion.
I'll take a motion. I'll take you. Why don't you
Oh.
make one?
Amanda
I'll
was
take
ready
one.
to second.
My apologies.
Make a motion
I make a motion
to
to
adjourn.
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 Sorry, I thought that's what
I
you
will
said.
second that.
Thank you,
All
Sean.
right, Sean seconded it. Amanda made the motion. I love it. Okay, let's vote, starting with Sean.
Aye.
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 Okay, it's been approved to officially close the meeting at 8:01 PM.
Nice
Thanks,
work.
everybody.
Wow.